Thank you for joining us on yet another NUS Business School webinar, where we try to navigate the new normal in these unprecedented, worrisome times of COVID-19. This edition is entitled How COVID-19 Will Transform the Maritime and Logistics Industry. And it is brought to you by PSA Corporation and SSA, the Singapore Shipping Association. Today with us, we have two speakers and panelists, Assistant Professor Puay Guan from the NUS Business School, and Guan, the Assistant Vice President of Market Research at PSA Corporation Limited. And I will be moderating the session. So how we will take it is we will first start with hearing Prof's thoughts on the matter, and then Guan's thoughts on the matter, and then we will delve deeper and ask them some questions. And then we will also be taking some questions from you all, our viewers. So please feel free to type them in the comment section below, and we will try to pick and answer a couple of them. All right, so I think quite a few of you have tuned in already, so let's get started. I'd like to first start with Prof. Let's get us started. What are your thoughts broadly about how COVID-19 is going to be impacting the shipping and logistics industry?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Akanksha. I think we are looking at different levels of impact. And the first thing we can look at, for example, is both at the macroeconomic level, and then as well as the individual company level. And that can be both short-term as well as long-term. So on the macroeconomic level, there's a trade impact, obviously. First, we saw supply was cut in China because they had to lock down their cities. And then subsequently, the rest of the world went into shutdown mode as well. And that affected the demand. So this would obviously affect the world trade and economy and shipping and logistics. So I'm sure that many of us already know about this. But I think moving forward, right, as the companies, as the cities and countries start to come back, and open up their economies, this demand will actually start to come back as well. Because what we have actually seen in this case is actually an artificially induced reduction of supply and an artificially induced reduction of demand. So that demand will come back in some form, right? Over a period of time, of course. It will not come back immediately, but over a period of time, it will come back because the fundamentals, were there before the economies crashed. Okay, but then if you think about world trade patterns may change, right? So obviously, we have seen the US-China trade tensions in the last year, and then with this COVID-19 situation, countries and also companies are talking about supply chain resilience, supply chain contingency planning, and that would obviously involve moving, sort of diversifying their areas of operation. So there may be changes in areas of operation beyond just manufacturing in China, for example. But what I think about this is that the overall trade and the overall demand is still there. So demand patterns may change. It's the same as if we think about the analogy of retail and e-commerce. So in the last decade, so consumer demand is still there, but it has changed from buying in a retail store to some extent to buying in the e-commerce platforms. But even then, that is not totally 100% switch, right? So there's some switch from a channel of retail to a channel of e-commerce. And in the same way, what we'll see is that the trading patterns will change. So overall demand, overall trade is still there, but we'll see some fragmentation of trade. Different regional patterns, for example, that may emerge. Okay, and the other thing, of course, is that when we think about global trends, in the last decade, we have been talking about globalization. So companies have gone overseas, they have expanded into new markets, and they have extended their supply chains as a result, both in manufacturing and in sourcing. But at the same time, we had this other trend of just-in-time or cost reduction, cost efficiency, right? So companies have also been working very hard on, JIT or total quality management initiatives that actually help them to improve their efficiency and to reduce costs. And what that has meant was basically reduction in inventories and efficiency gains in operations. So at the same time that you have a global operation, but you have improvements in supply chain efficiency, over time, this actually created potential for disruption. So even before this, what we're seeing is that you have natural disruptions, natural disasters that cause supply chain disruptions, and that actually was because we don't have enough inventory, and we do not have enough diversified sources. So this actually brings it home, more drastically, I think, for many companies, and therefore that contingency planning would be, even higher on top of the minds of top management, and and that could possibly mean that we would hold more inventories. We may need to position more inventory, more stock in different distribution centers around the world, just so that we have backup. Right, so not so much on having just-in-time kind of system, but having backup plans, which also means a higher level of cost, because every time we do backups, that actually creates a level of cost. Okay, and then on the individual company level, we'll probably see areas such as digitalization, use of technology, being that starts to transform individual company operations and the industry itself. So we can talk more about that in a while, but areas like collaboration platforms, supply chain visibility, these are things that companies have always been trying to encourage. But the trend, because of this COVID-19, these trends may actually accelerate, because now it is a business necessity and not so much and not just a good to have.
All right, thank you, Prof, for sharing your pretty comprehensive insights. So now we'll shift focus and we'll come to Sec 1 from PSA. PSA, of course, is a world-leading ports and terminals group. So Sec 1, give us your thoughts on this matter.
Yes, thank you, Akanksha, and thanks to NUS too for organizing this webinar, so that we can all share whatever that we know. Now, I would like to stress, in addition to what Prof had just mentioned. Now, firstly is that we cannot understand COVID-19 without understanding the history of world trade as well as the shipping network. Now, so certain parts of what is going to happen very much depend not just on the current impact of the COVID-19, but also what has been happening to the industry. That's point number one. Point number two is that COVID-19 don't exist alone to influence the world. There are many other factors that will run in parallel with COVID-19, which will equally has a strong impact on world trade as well as shipping pattern. And there are a few points that I would like to remind everybody. While we are seeking to go for resilience as against cost, now resilience or minimization of risk comes with a, there is no riskless supply chain in the world. While we may want to diversify our sourcing, say for example, we want to diversify from China to Mexico, it doesn't mean that by doing so you are risk-free. It actually could mean that certain aspect of risk that formerly you didn't thought of now becomes very, very strong, and may be even stronger than if you don't move your factories. So this is a small reminder. Second is that this COVID-19 impact on world trade, location of factories is not a new phenomenon. Actually, prior to the current year, 2020, there were already forces at work which force factories to relocate. Now, apart from the trade war, we see that China as the world factory has been strained. Now, we can see that through the rising wages of the China workers. And we can also see that from the pollution level. So China is in a way stressed. Now, in parallel with that, we see more robotization, more automation in the developed world. Technology has developed to a stage whereby labor cost is not the only input on where to locate their factories. So we do see there are forces at work which force factories to relocate. So in a way, COVID-19 simply expedited it. Now, we must also not forget that apart from this COVID-19 impact on world trade as well as network, there is this still very strong China expansion in trade. Now, 20 years ago, China container throughput was just 10% of the world. But today, they are 33%. They are expanding. And despite the trade war that we are talking about from 2018 to 2019, China still managed to increase its share. And this trend will continue as China seek to expand trade with even more countries now, given that, what has happened to them with trade with the US. So there will be more expansion of China trade with many more countries, Africa, South America, etc. We have to be mindful of the paradigm that we create for different sectors of the business, be it maritime, ports, supply chain, etc. Now, in the past, shipping lines may just need to concentrate, and most of their network concentration is between these two countries. But in the future, they may have to diversify some of their network out of China to more countries. So there is a diversification of the network effect on the shipping. Now, this diversification of the network, be it comes through factories who want to diversify from China to Southeast Asia, China to India, or China to Mexico, or it could also be China expanding to more trade with Africa, etc. Now, there will be a so-called dispersion of network effect. And in addition to that, Prof has just also mentioned that the just-in-time manufacturing concept has to be tweaked. There will be more needs for perhaps a bigger buffer of warehousing, because you can't have 1 or 2 months stock and expect it to be very resilient. So shipping companies, shipping lines, they will have to think of ways whereby their network change, which now has to be more distributed, and they at the same time they want to know how they could serve the shippers in terms of their storage needs, in terms of their warehousing needs. Now, in doing so, when the shipping lines are trying to make amendments to the network as well as do their storage needs, their view, their concept of a port-liner relationship will change. In the sense that a port in the future cannot be viewed the same way as now. Perhaps a shipping companies may view a port now as simply a node, a necessary node in order for the cargo to move from one place to another. But in future, in order for them to have a more robust, a more dispersed of network, they have to view a port as a value add to their network. Meaning that a port cannot be just a place to load and unload cargo. It should be viewed as a place of exchange. Exchange of slots, shipping slots, and exchange of boxes, and exchange of even space within the box. So there has to be change in the mindset of the shipping companies. Another mindset change, which is also very important, is in terms of serving the shippers' needs in terms of storage. Now, there could be increasingly a awareness that instead of building bigger warehouse, more inventory, actually they can save costs by having a shipping company and the port working together to actually provide interim storage within the port itself. And that product can be worked out together between the shipping companies and the port. Now, all these are related to paradigm shift, which perhaps we will slowly see it happening. apart from those paradigm shift, which in a while we can talk more about it, there could be also likewise be a network change. For example, if there is a shift of factories from China to Southeast Asia, China to India, for example. Now, in the past, China and US trade is normally done through the US West Coast for geographical reasons. But we know that Southeast Asia and India are actually closer to US East Coast than to the West Coast. So you may actually see some shift in that manner, in the sense that the outlook for East Coast ports may be brighter than the West Coast ports. So there are little twisting of the network here and there. And lastly, as Prof have mentioned, there are also lots of impact, potential impact on digitalization, which in a while we may discuss more about it. And that's it from me for the introduction.
Oh, wonderful. That was a very comprehensive insights you all gave. So basically, I think you both have also talked about the potential structural changes and the paradigm shifts in the way in which supply chains will operate by perhaps investing in warehousing solutions, moving away from just-in-time systems, and even moving away from making China the dedicated factory floor of the world. So next question will be for Guan again, actually. So Twitter recently announced that they would allow staff to work from home forever, should they choose to do so. And a recent Gartner survey also showed that 74% of CFOs are planning to move previously on-site employees to be able to work from home, even post the COVID-19 pandemic. In a fairly old school, traditional industry like shipping, do you foresee any such similar workplace changes taking place where we, moving forward, where we, any positions permanently moving to being remote?
Now, I would think that the workers can't really work from home, right? Because they have to be at port to serve the ships. So while certain segments of the industry, you just simply can't put them at home, okay? There are certain functions which may be able to do that. And I think people like workers, they may demand for it even after the COVID-19. That means they really see that it is a workable solution for them. Okay, so I think while it is not clear to me whether it will be permanent and will be whether it will be for everybody, but certainly there will be something which the company and the workers, they may want to explore something along those lines, and maybe perhaps create a permanent new options for the workers.
Got it. And Prof, anything you would like to add on to that?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll echo Guan's point. I think there is a physical economy which would obviously require physical operations to be in place. Probably what we see that has gone online and onto platforms very well, certain white collar kind of office type of functions. So areas like customer service, data entry, so could be data entry for finance, data entry for bill of ladings, for example, data entry of logistics information. Certain functions like that probably can be done as long as you have access to a computer and access to the central system. So that would probably happen to some extent. And why do I say some extent? And the reason is, I think that once things get back online, get back to back to normal operations, there is still some efficiency to be taken into account, right? When people have a face-to-face interaction. So the only way that we can be the same efficiency using an online and collaboration mode is if we have full information visibility across all operations. And currently to the supply chain, we may have information visibility within our own operation, and that's not even always the case. But it is very difficult so far to achieve that full information visibility across our own operations and across all operations. So that face-to-face contact and the ability to pick up the phone, the ability to go to someone's desk and ask a question actually has been very important, right? Even in any workplace. and that would continue, right, unless we have that full visibility of information.
Okay, that's a good things to look forward to, I suppose. So moving forward, the next question is about the magic word that was even there before the COVID times: digitization. So I think both of you have already touched on some trends, but mainly what both of you have echoed is that even before the pandemic, a number of companies had embarked on their digital transformation journeys, but mostly within their own ecosystems. So post-COVID, given a lot more structural faults have come to light between countries, what role do you see technology playing in this new world order? Do you envision digitization taking place in closed ecosystems, given the higher geopolitical volatility? Or do you envision a more open ecosystem with data sharing, open APIs, and collaborative innovation? What are your thoughts? Maybe we'll start with Segwan.
Akanksha, as what you have mentioned, now digitalization is like many trends which actually happened before the COVID-19. The COVID-19 actually expedited. Now, for me, I see digitalization push because of the COVID-19 in 3 areas. The first areas is in terms of processes and areas whereby automation is very much preferred. Now, just to give you an example, it doesn't apply to PSA Singapore, but what we understand is that for some ports, for example, when the trucks enter the gate, they have to pass some documents to the gate officer or gate staff. Now, during COVID-19, then that creates a problem. How are you going to pass the documents when you're not supposed to be, you're supposed to be 1 meter apart from one another. So you have a problem. So I think there will be companies will look at all their processes and wherever possible, they'll automate them. They will make, in PSA, we don't have a problem as in that we have a flow-through gate, which basically the truck can just flow into the port. Now, this is one area. The other area that COVID-19 will expedite in digitalization, I think, is in the area of data analytics. Now, when we're trying to study data analytic impact, now for people who are analysts or researchers or shipping people, they like to look at data to understand why certain thing happens that way. Just to give you an example, for example, in February, when China was very much hit by COVID-19, we see that meat import into China grew a lot. It's not just growing, it's double-digit growth. Meat. You may say that people need to eat. Well, that may be true. But what about drinks and beverage? It drops 20%. Why is that so? People don't have the drink or alcohol? So people want to know why. And you also notice that in February, import in China, products like glass-related, wood-related, textile-related, they all dropped by 10-20%. But people grew 20%. Natural rubber grew a lot too. Why? So people want to know more as to what has happened. And this area requires a lot of data analytics power to understand what is exactly in the steps to help us understand what's going on and may even better prepare us for the future. The third is like everybody has been talking about really is in terms of community systems really. I think all of us will kind of experience it as in that on one hand, you see that farmers have been throwing away their eggs, slaughtering away their chicken. They say there's no demand for it. But actually in Singapore, we need a lot of eggs, right? So there is a mismatch in demand and supply. If there is a community systems globally, it will make a lot of difference. For that matter, even locally. Locally, for example, if during COVID-19 period, when we want to truck, when they're short of workers, and the traditional truckers that has been trucking for you, for some reason the workers cannot report for work, then what? Similarly for shipping, we have heard a lot that there are shippers who says that, look, I need to move my box from a certain port to a certain port. But the traditional, the usual, the contractual shipping lines who serve me now has a problem. And they don't have information of who can help them. And I think in this kind of area, a community system will work. I'm saying it will work, but it takes time. All of us enjoying Grab's apps, happily using our phone. And to get a transport in terms of taxi is so easy. But can the same thing be applied to shipping, to trucking, etc.? And that will be some push. Hopefully, I myself hope that there'll be a push towards that area. That will be my belief in terms of digitalization.
Okay, thank you, Guan. So, Prof, before I go to you, I'm going to add in another question that we've received from the comments. We've received a question from Ye Tu Ang, and they've asked, do you think that the use of blockchain in supply chain industry will become widespread earlier than expected due to the disruptions caused by COVID-19? So what are your thoughts on this and the digitization of the industry?
Okay, sure. So when you think about collaboration platforms for supply chain, companies have actually been working on that for a number of years, right? And the reason is that there's a lot of information flow between different companies within the supply chain, between shipping lines, trucking, customs, ports, that is common information. So we have always been trying to work on initiatives like that, and some of that come from big companies, including like PSA or the shipping lines, and some of it come from startups that try to create these collaboration platforms. So and what I think is that those platforms, okay, will accelerate their growth because there is more need now, due to the lack of physical presence. So they would definitely have more traction going forward because of what people see as the need to have this information coordination between different parties, even without the face-to-face interactions. And then coming to blockchain, blockchain is underlying technology for this, right? So we should think of blockchain as not about the Bitcoin, Ethereum, because that is for sort of a trading purpose, but actually the use of blockchain as underlying technology because of the security, and immutability properties of blockchain, for this collaboration platform. So in some cases, you may not even see that it's blockchain because the worker can scan something on the mobile, okay, to upload the information, but the blockchain is actually the underlying technology beneath that information flow to actually make the information more secure, right? But potentially that can also improve the usage of such platforms because people have always been one of the factors that impede the adoption has always been security and confidentiality of data. So this is actually not new, and blockchain is one of the technologies that can help solve this. But blockchain is actually still in its early days as well.
Okay, yeah, you're right, and that's a good point. Underlying technology will be a lot of blockchain and other related technologies that are being developed right now. Next question again for Prof. Recently, Ms. Shadan Kaptanalu, the president of BIMCO, she renewed her calls for greener shipping. She stuck to the original IMO 2050 goals and stated that the revenue setbacks during these COVID times should not hamper those efforts. What are your opinions? Do you think greener shipping goals will maybe be sacrificed in the short term due to lower revenues? Or do you think that the maritime industry will be able to remain true to the original goals even through these tough times?
Well, there are different ways of looking at it. So if in the short term, obviously everybody is focused on immediate sort of survival and sort of making sure that they can last through this period. But if you look back at oil price back in 2008 and 2009, oil price does affect supply chains, and it does affect shipping, for example. So when oil price was very, very high in 2008, okay, in the $150, $120, $150 per barrel range. This was a time that companies first started talking about nearshoring, which is interesting, right? So nearshoring didn't actually start because of what the US said. Nearshoring to some extent started even in the 2008 era, right, when oil price was at its peak of $120 or $150, because then to transport from Mexico to the US was much cheaper than transporting from China to the US, right? So in a way, it becomes a counter trend, right? Where you have a lower oil price, and that actually makes the possibility of global supply chain, right, or transportation easier, right? Of course, it may have some impact on green initiatives, because when you compare the cost of solar, for example, or battery initiatives, those were predicated on a certain oil price being high, right? And therefore, comparatively, they can be more, they can be more cost effective against fossil fuels, right? So it really depends on, I guess, short term, the medium term and long term outlook, because no company actually invest based on short term, like, oh, the oil price is very low right now, but this may be a temporary fluctuation, right? We do not actually know at this point in time whether this will continue or not. But if it continues, then obviously it could have an impact on certain green initiatives, because then fossil fuels are more cost effective compared to to the green energy.
All right, thank you, Prof. In the interest of time, I will take a question from the comment section, and I will pose that to Guan. Guan, actually, as the pandemic develops, it's hard to say winners and losers, but there is a question from Colin Chow, which is interesting. Who are the winners and losers in the supply chain? So I'll just pad that up with some context if you'd like. How do you think perhaps like the container shipping side or trans-shipping sector may be impacted? Will we see a lot of belly ups like Hanjin, or will there be any more acquisitions of regional players by larger lines, or any strategies different than what we've seen before from container liners will be taken? And in all of that, who do you envision will have more opportunities for growth? Let's put it that way.
Okay. Now, I shall not. Okay, maybe there are two questions really. The first one is whether do we see a repeat of Hanjin, and the second one is really winners or losers. I suppose that means from a country perspective. Okay. Now, I hope not. I really think that already having so much problems, having another problem of that kind will really disrupt the industry. But that is a problem that is real. We should not write it off and say that nothing of that sort will ever happen. Okay, because there's a difference in reaction from the shipping industry now versus in the past. In the past, you see a lot of cutthroat competition, even when challenges arise. So we see that shipping lines has been shaken to the core in the past. Till today, you see that many of them do not make money, a lot of money. Okay. Now, this time around, the shipping industry reacted a bit differently. They are very coordinated. All the three alliances blank sales to cut costs. They try not to go into competition. They show a lot of restraint by not doing that. In fact, all of them wanted to do a GRI. They wanted to blank sales and at the same time do a GRI. So we see a lot more cooperation, unspoken, among them. So I would think that among themselves, all of them wanted to keep afloat. Okay, but having said that, there are some may fail, but I shall not venture into saying who. There are a lot of public reports on it, and you guys can just Google and see who are at the bottom, who are at risk. I think there are reports which spell it out that way. But that also brings up the very important question as to whether there's really enough competition in the shipping world or not. So for some people, they think that it has reached a stage whereby right now you only have 3 alliances. Come on, it's already, do we want only 2 alliances or what? So it does bring up that view of whether should the industry be better off with less companies and only 2 alliances perhaps. But from what has been manifested so far, I think the shipping world simply want to keep afloat for everybody. There is no cutthroat competition exhibited for now. That is something which, to me, I will welcome that. Now, as to who are the losers and who are the winners, now, it all depends on how they put it. You see, from, say for example, if I am a citizen of the US, I know that factories will be now perhaps shift to Mexico. So I'm now maybe more confident that even if China, anything happened to it, okay, I will still get my goods because I have a secondary producer in Mexico. But having that assurance for a customer perspective, is it good enough? Not forgetting that by having a distributed way of producing, by having a more places where you locate your factories, your shipping networks change. You have to cater for it. Early on, I spoke about the dispersion of network. It doesn't come free. It comes with a price. So are we prepared to pay more for whatever that we buy in the shops? So if I'm an American, I may have ease of mind now that I know that I'm now very resilient to whatever going to happen to China, but at the same time, I have to pay more. So am I better off after all? So it's a very complicated question depending on whose perspective we are talking about. From a country perspective, I would say ASEAN is in a very good position. Early on, I spoke about 2 mega trends happening in the world. The first mega trend is this manufacturing resilience, supply chain resilience, whereby factories may want to push to locate in more locations rather than just one. ASEAN will benefit because factories from China to Southeast Asia is very near, so we will benefit. Okay, and at the same time, we see that China themselves also want to push their trade to even more places. Again, Southeast Asia is the region they are looking towards to export more. Not forgetting that even if a factory is to shift from China to, say, for example, India or Bangladesh. Now, China is the most self-sufficient manufacturers of the world, meaning that whatever they manufacture, a lot of the raw materials and the parts can actually be produced by China themselves. So one may quickly judge that China will lose out. But even though China lost out in terms of producing the final product, now they find opportunities to export their raw materials and their whatever spare parts that is produced in China to those countries. In trade, it's very hard to say who wins, who loses. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning, risk is very subjective, and we should not strive for a risk-free world because that kind of supply chain doesn't exist. Okay, it's how you manage it, and while having production in one location does pose a problem, diversifying it also poses another set of problems and another set of risks. Are we prepared to handle those risks? We do not know yet, but the world is willing to try it, so let's see.
We have to wait and see, but hope for the best. Okay, so I can see that in the comment section, we have the last question now in the interest of time. In the comment section, there are quite a few people who are worried about Singapore's ability to withstand this as well. So there's David Song has asked something on those lines. So let me ask this last question to Prof perhaps. At the Singapore Maritime Week 2019 last year, Singapore secured the top spot in the leading maritime capitals of the world. Now, Singapore maintained its top position at the head of 15 leading maritime capitals and has been ranked first in the past 3 editions since 2012. So, but of course, the maritime experts, about 200 of them that they rank this, they have been saying that there may be more fierce competition posed to Singapore moving forward. Now, through this pandemic, is Singapore going to remain competitive, or do we see any other countries inching closer to the top with their performance? So, Prof.
Okay, sure. I think if you look at Southeast Asia as a growth area, for example, that could be where certain opportunities come by, and Guan mentioned about that. So if you talk about Vietnam or Myanmar as new manufacturing locations, okay. But I also echo his point that that the manufacturing will not just move totally out of China. We'll see some simple, some slight shifts, okay, or some level of shifts, but it's not a binary decision like 1 or 0. Okay, so China will still be part of the equation, but Southeast Asia and India for domestic market, Southeast Asia for export market would definitely come up as well, right? So those are opportunities. If you look at regional countries, I think in regional countries have always been trying to build up their ports and infrastructure, and they have had varying degrees of success. When it comes to cost, I don't think Singapore has been, is able to compete on cost effect, being able to, to be less expensive than the regional ports, So our competitive advantage has never been about cost. Our competitive advantage always been about various streams of supply chain activities coming together so that the sum is bigger than the individual parts. So what do I mean by that? We have a physical flow, which is our ports and trucking and logistics operations. We have financial flow, which is our financial hub, and ability to do trading and ability to do invoicing, even things like blockchain. We have the third largest blockchain capital in the world for blockchain implementations because of what people perceive as the stability of and reliability of our financial systems. And then we have our information capabilities, where you have information visibility of both the port and I would say the overall supply chain visibility as well. So it is the interaction of these streams of supply chain activities coming together that I think gives Singapore the competitive advantage, and it's actually hard to replicate. So on just physical cost alone, regional countries have always been, in a way, chipping away at our ports, right, and our other infrastructure. But taken together, I think that we have a certain edge in terms of how all these have been able to come together. I would actually maybe ask Guan as well, right, whether he wants to talk about what Tuas Megaport would try to create as their competitive advantage for the region.
Okay. So the question is really Singapore competitiveness as a port in the maritime world. Maybe a bit of history will help. Now, when we became independent, say in the 60s, in the 70s, now the pioneers decided to build a port against what the United Nations experts recommended to Singapore. Why? Because when they look at the fundamental, Singapore has no hinterland. Population size is that small. We will not attract cargo. We will not attract shipping companies. That was the advice given by the experts to us. But our pioneers decided to embark on this journey. It started then. And year in, year out, whenever PSA wanted to expand, this idea of our smallness comes in. Okay. I think it's fair. Because being small, we have our vulnerability. We are vulnerable to a lot of changes outside us. Okay. But at the same time, we must also be cautiously confident that we have our strength. And earlier on, at the beginning when I did the introduction on this topic, I talked about paradigm shift. Why is there a paradigm shift needed in the shipping world? It's because the network of the future will be more distributed than now. It has to be, because your factories is going to be located in more places now. So you need a more distributed network. Now, to build from a very concentrated network to one which is very distributed, to one that is distributed, needs investment. To minimize the cost, take advantage of the port is a very good strategy for them, for the shipping company. I hope they think that way. A port together with shipping companies will form a very good strategic partners for the long term in terms of serving this more distributed network. Singapore, with its very intense connectivity, we offer to shippers as well as to shipping companies a very good market for exchange. Now, we only talk about stock exchange, the MRT exchange, but really the port is the exchange. It's the exchange of shipping slots, shipping services, your box, and slots and the space within the box. So there are many things you can exchange with people, and that lowers cost for you. And not to forget that the manufacturing supply chain, the inventory, the idea of inventory will change. You need a higher stock level to manage resilience, to have resilience. And the port can offer that solution to you as well. So I would think that we have certain strength, and through partnerships with shipping companies or even with directly with shippers, it will make us stronger. And that is precisely the vision of TWAS. In PSA, there's a dedicated team of people doing just TWAS. How to build it out, how to have the technology to be installed, etc. I must say that those guys work very, very hard. And in time to come, perhaps they will, announce to Singaporeans about what they plan for us, including myself, what they plan for us. From the little that I know that it will be state of the art. A lot of automation. You'll see lorries moving around without drivers, even cranes without a crane operator. And besides that, the vision is to create a vibrancy in supply chain in Singapore. So the vision is there. And I think the TWAS will bring Singapore up to another level. But in the meantime, we have to be a little bit patient to wait for those guys to make those announcements to us. Yes.
Okay, so we've come to the end. So gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Once again, you have been listening to Associate Professor Prof. Guan from the NUS Business School, and of course, Guan, the Assistant Vice President of Market Research at PSA Corporation Limited. This was a quick bite-sized discussion about this, how this pandemic may bring about a new normal for the shipping and maritime sectors. And I hope all of you, our viewers, found it very useful. Please do join in at the next session with NUS Business School on Facebook Live again, coming Wednesday, that means day after tomorrow at 1 p.m., which will feature Mr. Jayant Narayan. He's also an associate professor at the NUS Business School, as he talks about leading in a crisis, can mindfulness help? All right, then that's it from me as well. Once again, my name is Akanksha Batura Pai. I am from Sinoda Shipping Agency. I'm also representing Singapore Shipping Association, and thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe, stay positive, take care of yourselves, and if you can, take care of someone else too. Adios.
Thanks, Guan, and thanks, Akanksha, as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.